The scent of pine and damp earth should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like burial. I pressed my forehead against the cold bus window, watching the mountain roads narrow into serpentine threads of cracked asphalt. My breath fogged the glass, obscuring the dense forest that climbed steep slopes on either side. Each turn took me further from Riverside Pack territory, further from the life I'd tried so desperately to build, further from the humiliation that still burned like acid in my throat. Unwanted, unworthy, unclaimed. The words had been whispered behind cupped hands at the mate gathering 3 nights ago, but whispers in a room full of wolves might as well be shouts. I'd worn the dress my grandmother had sewn for me before she died, pale blue cotton with careful stitches along the hem. Nothing like the silk and satin the other unmated females wore. I'd braided my wheat-colored hair with trembling fingers, weaving in the small silver charm Gran had given me on my 16th birthday. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, Wren," she'd told me, her weathered hands cupping my face. "It's standing in the storm and choosing not to bow." But I had bowed. When Alpha Garrett's son, Samuel, had approached me with that practiced smile, the one that didn't reach his cold gray eyes, I'd actually felt hope flutter stupidly in my chest. He'd circled me once, twice, his wolf assessing, judging. Then he'd leaned close enough that I could smell expensive cologne masking his natural scent. "Your omega pheromones are so weak I can barely detect them," he'd said conversationally, as if commenting on the weather. "My father needs strong alliances. You'd bring nothing to our bloodline." He'd walked away without waiting for a response. Why would he? Omegas didn't argue. We certainly didn't fight back, especially not weak ones like me, whose scent was apparently so diluted I might as well be human. The bus lurched over a pothole, jolting me back to the present. Only 2 other passengers remained. An elderly human couple who'd gotten on at the last town, clutching shopping bags and speaking in soft, tired voices. They didn't know what I was, couldn't sense the omega nature that made me simultaneously precious and worthless in wolf society. Precious because we were rare, capable of calming even the most dominant alphas, of bearing strong pups. Worthless because I couldn't do any of those things properly. My wolf whimpered inside me, a small hurt sound that made my chest ache. "I'm sorry," I thought to her. "I'm so sorry I'm not enough." The bus driver called out in a gravelly voice. "Blackthorn Ridge, last stop." My stomach clenched. Blackthorn Ridge wasn't a pack territory. It was barely a town, a scattered collection of houses clinging to the mountainside, home to humans, a few lone wolves, and apparently, the decrepit property my grandmother had left me in her will. The lawyer's letter had arrived 2 weeks after the mate gathering, after I'd already been released from my obligations to Riverside Pack. Released. Such a polite word for abandoned. I gathered my single duffel bag and descended the bus steps into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright, too indifferent to my misery. The air here was thinner, crisper, carrying the scent of snow even though it was early autumn. The bus pulled away with a belch of diesel smoke, leaving me alone on a dirt road that split into 2 directions, down toward the cluster of buildings I could see in the valley, or up toward the mountains. The lawyer's instructions had been simple. Follow the old fire road north for 2 miles. You'll know the house when you see it. I started walking. The forest closed around me like a living thing, all towering pines and aspens beginning to turn gold. My footsteps were muffled by fallen needles, and somewhere distant, a creek babbled over stones. This was wild land, unclaimed by any pack, which meant it was dangerous. Rogue wolves sometimes haunted places like this. Other predators, too, the kind that didn't care about pack law or omega protection instincts. But what did I have to fear anymore? I was already nothing. The fire road was overgrown, barely more than a path. Blackberry brambles snatched at my jeans. I'd been walking for maybe 30 minutes when I saw it. A small cabin perched on a rocky outcrop, its weathered wood silvered with age. Behind it, the mountain rose in a sheer cliff face of gray stone and stubborn vegetation. Before it, the land fell away to reveal a breathtaking view of the valley below, where the town looked like a child's toy village. My grandmother's house. I'd only been here once when I was 6. I barely remembered it, just impressions of warmth and wood smoke, of Gran's laughter, of feeling safe. My parents had cut ties with her after that visit. "She's filled your head with nonsense," my mother had snapped. "All that talk about old ways and gifts. You're Omega, Ren. Your gift is submission. Don't forget it." I'd tried so hard not to forget. Look where it had gotten me. The cabin door was unlocked, swollen with humidity but yielding when I put my shoulder into it. Inside, dust motes danced in the slanted light from 2 small windows. The space was single room, a kitchenette with an old wood stove, a sleeping area with an iron frame bed, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, and shelves, so many shelves, crammed with books and jars and bundles of dried herbs that still carried ghost scents of lavender and sage. It smelled like Gran, like the grandmother who'd told me stories about Omegas who were seers, healers, bridges between the spirit world and the living. Our kind wasn't always meant to be small and quiet, she'd whispered once, when my parents weren't listening. We were sacred. We held the balance. Foolish stories. Everyone knew Omegas were meant to support Alphas, to soothe and submit and bear children. Nothing sacred about it. I dropped my duffel on the bed, sending up a cloud of dust, and immediately sneezed 3 times. A laugh bubbled out of me, slightly hysterical, slightly desperate. This was my inheritance, a falling-apart cabin in the middle of nowhere, miles from any pack, far from the life I'd been taught to want. And yet, the knot in my chest loosened just a fraction. I spent the next hour cleaning, finding a broom in a narrow closet, discovering that the water pump still worked if I primed it. The cabin came alive under my hands, revealing hidden charms, hand-carved ravens along the windowsills, a beautiful mandala painted on the ceiling above the bed in faded blues and golds, crystals hanging on thin wires that caught the light and scattered rainbows across the walls. In the kitchenette, I found Gran's things carefully preserved. Her favorite mug, her reading glasses, a small locked wooden box tucked behind the flour tin. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out. The box was about the size of a book, made of dark wood with silver inlay forming symbols I didn't recognize. No keyhole, just a smooth surface and a sense of waiting. "Open for me," I whispered, feeling foolish. The box warmed under my palms. Then, with a soft click, the lid released. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, was a journal bound in leather, its pages thick and yellowed, and beneath it, something that made my breath catch, a silver pendant on a delicate chain, carved with the same symbols as the box, but it wasn't the craftsmanship that made my heart race. It was the way it hummed with energy, a frequency I felt in my bones, in the marrow deep place where my Omega nature lived. I lifted the journal with shaking hands and opened to the first page. To my Ren, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you have finally come home. I'm sorry I could not prepare you properly. Your parents saw to that. But perhaps it's better this way. Some things must be discovered, not taught. You are not weak, my darling girl. You never were. Your Omega gift simply runs in a different direction than others. Where they calm through submission, you calm through sight. Where they soothe through pheromones, you soothe through understanding what cannot be seen. You are a seer, Ren, the last of our line, and this mountain has been waiting for you. My hands went numb. The journal slipped from my grasp, landing with a soft thump on the wooden table. A seer. Impossible. That was legend, mythology, stories told to Omega children to make them feel special before reality crushed such notions. Seers could glimpse the spirit paths, could sense truths hidden from others, could... A howl cut through the air outside. Close. Too close. Then another, answering from a different direction. My wolf surged alert, hackles raised. These weren't friendly calls. These were hunting howls. I grabbed the pendant, fumbling to clasp it around my neck, and moved to the window. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of movement, large shapes, four-legged, circling, 4 wolves. Their scent drifted through cracks in the cabin walls. Male, feral, rogue. They'd caught my Omega scent on the wind. My heart hammered against my ribs. The cabin had no phone, no way to call for help. And even if I could, who would come? I belonged to no pack. I was nobody's Omega to protect. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Gran's voice, clear as if she stood beside me. The pendant against my chest grew warm, then hot. And suddenly, impossibly, the world shifted. I could see them now, truly see them. The four rogues, their intentions written in colors and shadows only I could perceive. Hunger, yes, but more than that. They were starving, driven mad by it. Pack bonds broken so long ago they barely remembered what it meant to be whole. And beyond them, further up the mountain, I saw something else, a presence. Vast and ancient and waiting, like the mountain itself had consciousness. The door rattled. One of the rogues was testing it, shoving. I pressed my palm flat against the wood and did something I'd never done before. I'd never been strong enough to do before. I pushed my omega nature outward, not to submit, but to speak. Peace. I sent into the twilight. There is no prey here, only peace. The rattling stopped. The pendant blazed against my skin, and I saw, truly saw, the golden threads of energy flowing from me, through the cabin walls, touching each of the four broken wolves. Their forms shimmered, and for just a moment, I glimpsed what they'd once been, pack wolves, loyal and strong, before something had shattered them. One by one, the presences withdrew. The hunting howls faded to confused whimpers, then silence. I collapsed against the door, sliding down to sit on the floor, gasping. My whole body shook. The pendant slowly cooled against my skin. In the fading light, Gran's journal lay open on the table, and I could just make out the next line of her careful handwriting. Welcome home, little seer. Your real education begins now. I didn't sleep that first night. How could I, when the world had cracked open to reveal something vast and inexplicable underneath? I sat at Gran's wooden table until dawn, reading by candlelight. The journal was filled with her careful script, documenting decades of knowledge about Omega Seers, what we were, what we could do, why we'd been systematically erased from pack memory. According to Gran, Alphas had once relied on Seers to guide them, to see the threads of fate and consequence that their dominance-driven minds couldn't perceive, but somewhere along the centuries, fear had replaced reverence. An Omega who could see truth was dangerous. Better to breed it out, to convince Omegas themselves that submission was their only gift. We became what they needed us to be, Gran had written, small, quiet, invisible. We forgot ourselves so thoroughly that even our own children didn't know what they'd lost. But I'd felt it last night, that surge of power, clear and undeniable. I'd turned away 4 feral rogues without violence, without an alpha's protection, with nothing but the sight Gran claimed was my birthright. As pale light filtered through the windows, I finally allowed myself to examine the pendant properly. The silver was old, heavy, warm to the touch even now. The symbols etched into its surface seemed to shift when I looked at them directly, forming patterns that my conscious mind couldn't quite grasp, but my Omega instincts understood. Protection, clarity, bridge. I clasped it around my neck, tucking it beneath my shirt where it rested against my sternum. The moment it touched my skin, the cabin came alive. Not literally, but I could suddenly sense the age of the place. The memories soaked into the wood like water into earth. Gran's presence was strongest, but there were others. Women before her, a line stretching back generations, all living in this cabin, all learning what I was learning now. The mountain held us in its memory. My stomach growled, reminding me that spiritual awakening didn't erase practical needs. I had granola bars in my duffel, and not much else. The town was 2 miles down the mountain, and I'd need supplies if I was going to stay here. If I was going to stay. The thought should have been immediately dismissed. I had no pack, no prospects, no future here. The smart thing would be to sell the property, if I could find a buyer, and use the money to start somewhere else. Somewhere I could disappear into human society. Maybe suppress my Omega nature enough to pass as ordinary, but the pendant warmed against my skin. And I knew with sudden certainty that leaving wasn't an option. Whatever had started last night wasn't finished. The mountain was waiting. For what, I didn't yet know. I changed into fresh clothes, braided my hair, and shouldered my nearly empty backpack. The walk down the mountain in daylight was different than my arrival. I noticed things I'd missed before. Marks on trees that weren't random scratches but deliberate symbols. Clearings arranged in patterns. And everywhere, that sense of watching, of presence, though nothing threatening showed itself. Blackthorn Ridge in morning light was humble but tidy. A general store, a diner, a hardware shop, a small library, and a handful of houses scattered among the pines, humans mostly, though I caught the scent of wolves here and there. Lone wolves, probably, or wolves who'd chosen solitude over pack politics. The general store's bell chimed as I entered. Inside, it smelled like coffee and sawdust and old wood. Shelves were packed with everything from canned goods to fishing lures. A radio played softly behind the counter, some classic rock station. The woman at the register looked up from her newspaper and smiled, genuine warmth that caught me off guard. She was human, middle-aged, with laugh lines and gray streaked brown hair pulled into a practical ponytail. "New in town?" she asked, not unkindly. "Sort of. I inherited my grandmother's cabin." "Helena Ashford?" The woman's expression shifted to something softer, sadder. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry for your loss. Helena was a wonderful woman, kept to herself mostly, but whenever anyone in town needed help, doctoring, advice, even just a listening ear, she was there. You must be Wren." The fact that this stranger knew my name made my throat tight. "She talked about me? Every chance she got. Showed me pictures when you were little. She was so proud of you." The woman extended her hand across the counter. "I'm Margaret. I run this place with my husband, Tom. You need anything, and I mean anything, you come find us." I shook her hand, overwhelmed by the simple kindness. In Riverside Pack, Omegas weren't treated poorly, exactly. But there was always a distance, a reminder that we were valued for what we could provide, not for who we were. "Thank you. I just need some basics. Food, firewood maybe?" "Firewood we can deliver. Tom will bring a cord up this afternoon. As for food..." Margaret came around the counter, pulled a basket from a stack, and started walking the aisles with me, pointing out local favorites, sharing gossip about the town, treating me like a person rather than a commodity. I was comparing pasta prices when the bell chimed again. The temperature in the store dropped. Not literally, but some instinct made my spine straighten, made my wolf go very still. 3 men entered. Wolves, unmistakably. The scent of pack rolled off them, thick and territorial. They wore working clothes, flannel and denim, boots caked with mud, but moved with the coordinated ease of wolves accustomed to hierarchy. The one in front was massive, broad-shouldered, with black hair and a thick beard going gray at the edges. His eyes swept the store and landed on me with the weight of assessment. Alpha. Everything about him screamed dominance, from his posture to the way the other two deferred, staying half a step behind. My Omega nature responded instinctively. Not submission exactly, but awareness, acknowledgement of power. His nostrils flared slightly. He'd scented what I was. "Margaret," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Need to settle Tom's account." "Of course, Soren. Give me just a minute." Margaret's tone was respectful, but not fearful. Whatever pack these wolves belonged to, they clearly coexisted peacefully with the human population here. Soren. The name felt significant somehow, though I didn't know why. I turned back to my shopping, trying to be invisible. Old Omega habits dying hard. But I felt his gaze on me, felt the questions forming. Unmated Omegas didn't wander alone. We didn't live on isolated mountains without pack protection. My presence here violated unspoken rules. I gathered my items quickly, bringing them to the counter. Margaret rang them up with cheerful efficiency, while Soren waited, arms crossed, still watching. "That'll be $43.50, hun." I counted out cash, the last of my meager savings, and Margaret bagged everything, adding a package of homemade cookies on the house, despite my protests. I was almost to the door when Soren's voice stopped me. "You're Helena's granddaughter, not a question." I turned slowly. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Easily 6'4", built like someone who worked hard physical labor, with scars crossing his knuckles and a presence that filled the room. But his eyes, dark brown beneath heavy brows, held curiosity more than threat. "Yes." "You planning to stay on the mountain?" Yes, for now. Something flickered across his face. Concern? That's wild land. No pack protection. There are rogues, bears, worse things. And Omega alone? I managed fine last night. The words came out sharper than I intended, sharpened by 3 nights of being told what I couldn't do, couldn't be. One of the wolves behind Soren, younger, with rust-colored hair, snorted softly. Managed how, exactly? You can't even... Finn. Soren's voice cracked like a whip. The younger wolf fell silent immediately, but his skeptical expression remained. Soren studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling sense he was seeing more than I wanted to reveal. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a battered business card, pressing it into my hand. Crescent Hollow Pack. I'm the Alpha. If you need anything, trouble, supplies, help, you call that number. Day or night. The card was warm from his body heat. I looked down at the simple text. Soren Matthias, Alpha. Crescent Hollow Pack. A phone number. An address in town. I don't want to owe anyone, I said quietly. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Your grandmother helped my people more times than I can count, never asked for anything in return. As far as I'm concerned, you're already owed. Call it inherited credit. Before I could respond, he nodded once and walked to the counter, the other 2 wolves trailing after him. I slipped out while Margaret helped them, my heart beating too fast. The walk back up the mountain felt different now. I had food, I had firewood coming, I had a strange Alpha's offer of protection folded in my pocket. I had Gran's journal and a pendant that let me see things that shouldn't be visible. I had the beginning of something, though I couldn't yet name what. Tom arrived that afternoon as promised. Margaret's husband, a kind-faced human who stacked a cord of firewood outside the cabin with practiced efficiency and refused payment. Already settled, he said with a wink. Helena had credit stored up, lots of it. After he left, I spent the evening learning to use the wood stove, burning my fingers twice before getting it right. I made pasta with jarred sauce, ate sitting on the cabin's small porch, watching the sun set over the valley. The town below twinkled with warm lights. Smoke rose from chimneys, lives being lived, ordinary and safe. I touched the pendant, closed my eyes, and saw. The mountain lit up in my mind's eye like a constellation, not with regular light, but with something else. Veins of energy, pathways of power, connecting the earth and sky and everything between. I saw the animals, their life force glowing soft and steady. Saw the trees breathing, roots communicating beneath the soil. Saw the spirits, yes, spirits, translucent and beautiful, moving through it all like dancers in a current. And further up, where the mountain peak disappeared into clouds, I saw something vast coiled like a sleeping serpent. Ancient, patient, aware of me in return. What are you? I thought. The answer came not in words but in feeling. Guardian. Keeper. The mountain's consciousness, perhaps, or something so old it had become indistinguishable from the land itself. What do you want from me? Again, not words, just a sense of waiting, testing. The mountain wanted to know if I was ready. For what, I still couldn't see. I opened my eyes, gasping. The valley lights seemed dim now, ordinary after what I'd witnessed. Inside the cabin, Gran's journal lay open where I'd left it. I went to it, turning pages until I found the entry I needed. The mountain chooses its guardians, not through force, but through recognition. If you can see it, if it reveals itself to you, then you belong here. But belonging comes with responsibility, Ren. The balance between the wild and the civilized, between pack and prey, between the seen and unseen. That balance must be maintained. That's what seers do. That's why we're needed, even when no one remembers needing us. A howl rose from somewhere down the mountain. Then another, closer. But these weren't rogue calls. These were organized, pack wolves running patrol patterns. Crescent Hollow Pack, probably. Soren's wolves, keeping the boundaries. I wondered what he'd think if he knew what I could see. What I was beginning to understand. Would he fear me, like the old alphas had feared seers? Or would he be one of the rare ones Gran wrote about? Alphas strong enough to value truth over comfort? The pendant pulsed once, warm and steady. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I'd read more, learn more, begin to understand what exactly I'd inherited beyond a cabin in solitude. But tonight, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I fell asleep without crying, without feeling like a failure, without wishing I was someone else. The mountain held me, and I, impossibly, felt held. The days fell into a rhythm I'd never experienced before. Solitary but not lonely, challenging but not crushing. I woke with the sun, made coffee on the wood stove, and spent hours reading Gran's journal while the mountain came alive around me. She documented everything: exercises to strengthen my sight, meditations to quiet the noise of physical perception so the spiritual could emerge, even recipes for teas that heightened awareness. I practiced obsessively. At first, I could only catch glimpses, flashes of the energy threads connecting living things, brief impressions of emotion from the animals that passed near the cabin. But by the end of the first week, I could sit on the porch and watch the forest's invisible architecture reveal itself, layer by layer, until I understood that what most saw as wilderness was actually a complex communicating ecosystem of consciousness. The pendant helped. It acted as a focus, amplifying what was already within me. Gran had written that each seer in our line had worn it, adding their own understanding to its power. When I held it, I sometimes caught fragments of their memories. Women with my wheat-colored hair and my small frame, standing in this exact spot, seeing what I now saw. We weren't extinct, just forgotten, waiting. On the 8th day, I walked into town for more supplies and found Margaret in a state of quiet distress. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting my basket on the counter. She glanced toward the back room, lowered her voice. "Tom's brother, Paul. He's in a bad way. Hurt himself working timber up north. Infection set in before he could get to a doctor. Doc Morrison's doing what he can, but..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "Sorry, you don't need to hear our troubles." But the pendant had grown warm the moment she mentioned illness. I touched it through my shirt, felt it pulse. Could I see him? Margaret blinked. See him? My grandmother was a healer. She taught me some things. A lie and a truth tangled together. Gran had taught me through her journal, through the knowledge she'd left behind. I might be able to help. Hope and skepticism warred on Margaret's face. Hope won. I'll call Tom. 20 minutes later, I was in the back room of a small house at the edge of town, looking down at a man in his 50s who was gray with fever. The wound on his leg, a deep gash from a chainsaw that had been badly stitched, was angry red, swollen, radiating heat. Tom and Margaret stood by the door, anxious. Doc Morrison, an elderly human with skeptical eyes, watched from beside the bed. I knelt, placed my hand near the wound without touching it, and closed my eyes. With the sight, infection looked like black roots spreading through healthy tissue, choking the body's natural light. I could see Paul's life force struggling, dimming. Another day, maybe 2, and the darkness would reach too far to stop. But I could also see the pathways of healing, what needed to be drawn out, what needed to be strengthened. Instinct took over, the same instinct that had turned away the rogues. I called on the pendant's power, on the mountain's ancient energy, on my own omega nature that was meant to soothe and balance. My hands grew hot. I felt the infection resisting, felt Paul's body fighting. So I did something Gran's journal had described, but I'd never attempted. I sang. Not words, just sound. A low humming that built into a melody I'd never heard before, but somehow knew. The song of seeing, of healing, of calling light back into places where darkness had taken root. The black roots in my vision withered, retreated. Paul's life force flared brighter. When I opened my eyes, sweat dripping down my temples, the wound looked different. Still bad, still needing proper care, but the angry redness had faded to pink. The swelling had reduced, and Paul's breathing, which had been shallow and labored, came easier. Doc Morrison stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Keep it clean," I managed, my voice hoarse. "Antibiotics if you have them. He'll recover now." I stood, swayed, and Tom caught my elbow. "Steady there." Margaret was crying. What did you? My grandmother's gift, I said simply. She passed it to me. It was Tom who said what the others were thinking. You're not just an Omega, are you? I met his eyes. No, I'm a seer. The word hung in the air. Doc Morrison's expression shifted from skepticism to something like awe. Margaret crossed herself, an old human gesture of reverence. And Tom just nodded slowly, as if something had finally made sense. Helena told me once, he said quietly, that her granddaughter would come home when the mountain called. Said the town would need you, even if we didn't know it yet. He squeezed my shoulder gently. Welcome home, Wren. The walk back up the mountain should have been triumphant. Instead, I felt exposed, raw. I'd revealed myself to humans, yes, but humans talked. And if word spread that an Omega seer was living on Blackthorn Ridge, the pendant grew suddenly cold against my chest. I stopped walking. Around me, the forest had gone silent. No birdsong, no rustling, just oppressive quiet. My wolf stirred uneasily, then I smelled them. Multiple wolves. Not Soren's pack. These scents were unfamiliar, carrying an edge of aggression that made my instincts scream danger. They emerged from the trees in a loose semicircle, cutting off the path ahead. 5 males, all in human form but radiating dominance. Their clothes were expensive, out of place in these woods, designer jackets and boots made for appearance rather than function. City wolves, probably, and from their synchronized movements, their matched bearing, definitely pack. The one in the center stepped forward. He was handsome in a cold, calculated way, sharp features, ice-blue eyes, silver-shot black hair despite appearing only in his 30s. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. Well, he said, voice smooth as poisoned honey. The little lost Omega. We've been looking for you, Wren Ashford. My heart hammered. I don't know you. No, but we know you. Word travels fast in pack circles. Riverside packs rejected Omega, living alone on Blackthorn Ridge. Very interesting. He smiled, showing too many teeth. I'm Cade Frost, Alpha of Silver Point Pack, out of Seattle, and I'm here to make you an offer. Every instinct told me to run. But there was nowhere to go. They'd positioned themselves perfectly, and even if I shifted, I couldn't outrun 5 adult males. I'm not interested in pack politics, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm not interested in anything except being left alone. How refreshingly naive. Cade moved closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. You see, we have a problem. My pack is strong, wealthy, influential, but we lack something crucial, a true Omega. Our last one died in childbirth 2 years ago, and we've been unable to find a replacement until now. I don't belong to any pack. I can't be claimed. Oh, but you can. You're unclaimed, unmated, unprotected. Pack law is very clear. Any alpha can extend an invitation to an unmated Omega, and if that Omega refuses, his smile widened. Well, there are ways to ensure compliance. One of the wolves behind him, a blonde with cold eyes, added, especially for Omegas who don't have the strength to enforce their own will. The old shame tried to rise, the familiar voice that said they were right, that I was too weak to refuse, too worthless to deserve choice. But then the pendant blazed hot against my skin, and I saw. Cade Frost's pack bonds were visible in my sight, threads of silver connecting him to the wolves around him, yes, but also stretching back toward Seattle, toward a pack that wasn't prosperous. It was fracturing. The bonds were frayed, some nearly severed. They needed an Omega not for strength, but for survival, to soothe the conflicts tearing them apart from within. And beneath Cade's practiced charm, I saw darkness, violence, a willingness to do whatever it took to maintain his position, even if it meant breaking every law that protected Omegas from being forced. No, I said clearly. Cade's expression didn't change, but the air around him chilled. I wasn't asking. You'll come with us now, or we'll make this difficult. She said no. The new voice came from behind me, deep, commanding, vibrating with alpha power that made Cade seem like a candle beside a bonfire. I turned to see Soren emerging from the trees, flanked by 3 of his wolves. Not Finn this time, but others. A tall woman with a scarred face, a stocky male with intelligent eyes, and a younger female who looked barely 20. Soren positioned himself between me and Cade's pack, creating a physical barrier. "This is Crescent Hollow territory. You're trespassing. Blackthorn Ridge is unclaimed land," Cade countered, though his easy confidence had developed cracks. "We have every right to extend pack invitation to unmated Omegas. Not when that Omega has formally accepted my pack's protection." Soren didn't look at me, but I felt the weight of what he'd just claimed. Pack protection was serious, binding. It meant Crescent Hollow accepted responsibility for my safety, my well-being. As of 3 days ago, Wren Ashford is under Crescent Hollow guardianship. Any threat to her is a threat to my pack. Cade's eyes narrowed dangerously. "That's a bold claim." "Does the Omega confirm it?" They all turned to look at me. Soren's wolves with hope and determination. Cade's pack with thinly veiled threat. And Soren himself with something unreadable in his dark eyes, not quite a plea, but close. 3 days ago. He was lying. I'd had no contact with Crescent Hollow beyond our brief meeting in Margaret's store, but he was offering me a shield, a way out. "Yes," I said, lifting my chin. Alpha Soren extended protection, and I accepted. The lie felt like truth on my tongue. And with the sight, I could see the threads forming even as I spoke. Silver bonds, delicate but real, connecting me to Soren's pack structure. Not full pack bonds, not claiming, but protection. Guardianship. Cade stood very still for a long moment. Then he smiled, cold and calculating. "How unfortunate. It seems we've had a misunderstanding." He began backing away, his wolves moving with him. "But do remember, Wren Ashford, pack protection can be withdrawn, and Seattle is closer than you think." They melted into the forest like smoke. I waited until their scents had faded completely before my knees buckled. Soren caught me, his large hands gentle despite their strength. "Easy, you're safe. You lied for me." "Yes." He helped me sit on a fallen log, crouching to eye level. This close, I could see the gray threading his black beard, the laugh lines around his eyes, the old scars marking his neck and jaw. A warrior's face, but not cruel. "Want to tell me what a Seattle Pack Alpha wants with you badly enough to trespass?" I should have deflected, should have kept my secrets, but something about Soren, about the way he'd stepped between me and danger without hesitation, about the genuine concern in his expression, made me want to trust. "I'm a seer," I said quietly. "Like my grandmother. And word is spreading." He didn't laugh, didn't dismiss it, just studied me with those deep brown eyes and nodded slowly. Helena was special. Everyone knew it, even if we didn't have a name for what she could do. He stood, offered his hand. "Come on. We should talk somewhere safer than the middle of the woods." "The cabin. I know where it is. My wolves have been patrolling near your property line since you arrived, making sure nothing bothers you." He saw my expression and added, "With respect. We haven't been spying. Just making sure you were safe." The scarred female wolf stepped forward. "I'm Iris, second in command. Those Silver Point bastards have been sniffing around our territory for weeks. We thought they were after land rights, but..." She looked at me with new understanding. "They were looking for you specifically." "How did you know to come?" I asked. The younger female grinned. "Tom called. Said you'd headed up the mountain and seemed upset, and there were strange wolves in town asking about you. Alpha Soren doesn't ignore warnings." My throat tightened. The humans protecting me, this pack protecting me. After a lifetime of being told I needed protection because I was worthless, here were people protecting me because I mattered. Soren gestured up the path. "Walk with me? We need to discuss what pack protection actually means, if you're willing to make it real." I should have been terrified, should have refused. But the pendant was warm and steady against my chest, and when I looked at Soren with my sight, I saw his pack bonds, strong, healthy, built on loyalty rather than fear. And I saw something else, a loneliness that mirrored my own, a weight of responsibility carried without complaint, a strength that didn't need to crush others to prove itself. "Okay," I said, "let's talk." We walked up the mountain together, Crescent Hollow Pack surrounding me like a living shield, And for the first time since the mate gathering, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Soren's wolves stayed outside while we talked, forming a loose perimeter around the cabin. Through the window, I could see them in relaxed but alert positions. Iris leaning against a tree, the stocky male whose name I learned was Garrett examining the woodpile Tom had delivered, the young female called Sage sitting cross-legged on a boulder, face tilted toward the fading sunlight. Inside, Soren filled the small space with his presence, though he was careful not to crowd me. He examined Gran's things with obvious respect, fingers trailing over the book spines, the dried herb bundles, the painted mandala on the ceiling. "She taught me about mountain laurel poisoning when I was 16, he said quietly. "One of my wolves ate the wrong plant on a hunt. Helena came down from this cabin with her medicines and knowledge, sat with him for 3 days until the fever broke. Never asked for anything in return." He turned to face me. "Your grandmother saved lives, Ren. Not just wolves, humans too. She was a healer when we had none, a counselor when conflicts arose. She kept balance here. She was a seer," I said. "Like me, I know. Or at least I suspected." He settled carefully into one of the wooden chairs, his large frame making it look like doll furniture. "When I was young, maybe 12, I got lost in the woods during a bad storm. Found myself at her door, terrified, half frozen. She took me in, gave me tea, and then she looked at me. Really looked. And told me things about myself no one should have known. Said I'd be alpha one day, that I'd carry heavy choices, that I'd need to learn when to fight and when to heal." His expression grew distant. My father was still alpha then. Powerful, traditional. I thought she was crazy. But she was right. Every word. My father died when I was 22. The pack looked to me. And every major decision I've made since then, I've heard her voice asking, "Are you fighting or healing, Soren? Which does your pack truly need?" He met my eyes. "She had a gift. Now you're telling me you have the same one." I pulled the pendant from beneath my shirt, let him see it. She left me this, her journals, instructions for developing the site. I hesitated, then pushed forward. I can see things others can't, energy, connections, intentions. When Cade Frost approached me, I saw that his pack is dying from the inside. He needs an Omega to hold it together. And he doesn't care if that Omega is willing. Soren's jaw tightened. Silver Point Pack has a reputation. Wealthy, yes. Influential, yes. But they maintain power through coercion and strategic alliances, not loyalty. If Cade is getting desperate, he shook his head. He won't stop, Ren. You embarrassed him today, made him look weak in front of his wolves. He'll come back. Then what do I do? Accept Crescent Hollow's protection. Truly accept it, not as a temporary shield, but as pack bond. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. I won't lie to you. Being under pack protection means obligations. You'd be expected to contribute to pack welfare, attend certain gatherings, respect pack hierarchy. But it also means safety. It means Cade can't touch you without declaring war on us, and it means you'd have a family, if you want one. The word family hit harder than expected. I'd had parents who'd rejected Gran's teachings, who'd tried to mold me into something I wasn't. I'd had a pack that had discarded me the moment I proved insufficiently useful. Family was a concept I'd learned to distrust. But when I looked at Soren with my sight, I saw the truth of his offer. No manipulation, no hidden agenda. Just genuine protection offered to someone he saw as worthy of it. What would you expect from me? I asked carefully. Whatever you're willing to give. Your grandmother helped us with healing, with counsel, with keeping the balance between our pack and the human population here. If you could do the same, we'd be grateful. But I won't force your gifts into service, Ren. You're not a tool to be used. His expression grew fierce. You're a person who deserves safety and respect. Everything else is secondary. I stood, moved to the window. Outside, Sage was laughing at something Garrett said, her joy uncomplicated and bright. Iris stood watch like a sentinel, scarred and strong, and utterly committed to her purpose. They were pack, bound together by choice and loyalty, protecting each other because that's what pack meant. Could I belong to something like that? The pendant pulsed warmth. When I touched it, I felt Gran's presence like a whisper. Trust him, little seer. Some alphas remember the old ways. Some are strong enough to value wisdom over dominance. Okay, I said, turning back to Soren. I accept Crescent Hollow's protection. Tell me what I need to do. Relief flooded his features. Nothing dramatic. We'll formalize it at the next pack gathering, 3 days from now. You'll stand before the pack. I'll formally extend guardianship. You'll accept. The pack will witness and acknowledge. That makes it law, binding under every pack accord in North America. Will they accept me? An Omega from outside, rejected by her birth pack? Soren stood, and suddenly I was reminded of exactly how large he was, how much power lived in his frame. But he moved slowly, carefully, until he stood before me with one hand extended. My pack judges wolves by their character and their actions, not their designation or their past. You healed Paul this morning. Tom called me right after, amazed and grateful. You turned away rogues on your first night here without violence. You stood up to Cade Frost when most Omegas would have crumbled. His hand remained steady, waiting for mine. You're already proving your worth, Ren. The pack will see that. I placed my hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused, engulfing mine completely. And the moment our skin touched, the sight flared. I saw him. Truly saw him. The loneliness I'd glimpsed before was deeper than I'd realized, carved by years of leading alone after losing his mate to illness 5 years prior, the weight of protecting not just wolves, but the fragile peace between species in Blackthorn Ridge, the fear that he wasn't enough, wasn't wise enough, wasn't strong enough to keep everyone safe. And beneath all of that, I saw something that made my breath catch. Recognition. He saw me the way I saw him, not as Omega and Alpha playing predetermined roles, but as two people carrying burdens too heavy to share, suddenly finding someone who understood. I pulled my hand back quickly, overwhelmed. 3 days? 3 days. I'll have wolves patrol near your property line until then. And Ren? He moved toward the door, paused. If you need anything at all, you howl. We'll come. After they left, I sat on the porch watching darkness claim the valley, trying to process everything that had happened. In less than 2 weeks, I'd gone from rejected and hopeless to hunted by a dangerous pack and protected by one I barely knew. I'd discovered abilities I'd thought were myths. I'd healed a dying man with nothing but intention and song. The mountain hummed with approval. That vast presence I'd sensed coiled at its peak, stirring like something waking from long sleep. What are you preparing me for? I asked it silently. The answer came in images, feelings. The balance was shifting. Crescent Hollow Pack was strong but small. The human population was vulnerable. And packs like Silver Point, hungry for resources and power, were circling closer. The mountain needed a guardian who could see threats before they arrived, who could heal what was broken before it shattered, who could bridge the gap between wolf and human, physical and spiritual. It needed a seer. It needed me. The 3 days passed in a strange mixture of peace and preparation. I read Gran's journals obsessively, learning about pack dynamics, about formal ceremonies, about how Omegas once served as advisors and visionaries rather than just supporting roles. I practiced my sight until I could maintain it for hours, watching the forest's invisible architecture, learning to distinguish between different types of energy and intention. And I sewed. Gran had left fabric and thread, and some instinct told me I needed to look like I belonged. Not to impress, but to honor the occasion. I made a simple dress from cream-colored linen, embroidering the hem with symbols from Gran's journals. Protection, clarity, belonging. It was nothing like the elaborate gowns I'd seen at the Riverside mate gathering. But when I held it up, the pendant warmed with approval. On the morning of the gathering, Iris arrived at dawn with Sage, both in human form, carrying wildflowers. Pack tradition, Iris explained, beginning to weave the flowers into my hair. Her scarred hands were surprisingly gentle. When someone joins the pack, They're adorned with mountain laurel and columbine, beauty and strength. Your grandmother always prepared the flowers for our ceremonies. She would have loved you," Sage added quietly, weaving a strand of my wheat-colored hair into an intricate braid. "Alpha Soren said you healed Paul without touching him, that you can see things." I met her eyes in the small mirror I'd propped on the table. "Does that frighten you?" "No," she said simply. "It gives me hope. We're a small pack, only 37 wolves. The world's getting more complicated, more dangerous. Having someone who can see what's coming? That's a gift." By the time they finished, I looked like something from a forest fairy tale. Hair crowned with flowers, the cream dress flowing, the silver pendant visible against my chest. Not powerful in the traditional sense, but undeniably present. No longer invisible. The gathering was held in a clearing deep in Crescent Hollow territory, ringed by ancient pines and open to the sky. The entire pack was there, 37 wolves in human form, arranged in a loose circle. I saw families, elders, young wolves barely past adolescence. Saw warriors like Iris and Garrett, mothers with children, lone wolves who'd found belonging here. They watched me with curiosity but not hostility as Soren led me to the circle's center. He wore simple clothes, jeans and a dark Henley, but the alpha power rolled off him in waves, undeniable and absolute. When he spoke, his voice carried to every wolf present. 300 years ago, this territory was balanced by those who could see beyond the physical, the seers. They kept harmony between predator and prey, between pack and human, between the wild and the civilized. We lost that wisdom. We forgot what we needed. He turned to me. "Ren Ashford carries that forgotten gift. She is Helena's heir, a seer awakening to her power. And she has asked for our protection." He extended his hand. I took it, feeling the weight of 37 pairs of eyes on us. "I, Soren Matthias, Alpha of Crescent Hollow Pack, extend formal guardianship to Ren Ashford. She will be pack under my protection, sheltered by our strength, honored for her gifts. Any who threaten her threaten us all." His grip tightened slightly. "Do you accept?" The words rose from somewhere deep, somewhere true. "I accept." The pack howled, not in human voices but in wolf song, a chorus that raised the hair on my arms and brought tears to my eyes. The sound echoed off the mountains, declaring to everything with ears that I belonged now. I was claimed. I was pack. When the howling faded, wolves approached one by one to welcome me. An elderly woman with silver hair kissed my cheek and whispered, "Your grandmother would be so proud." A young couple introduced their toddler, who grabbed my pendant with chubby fingers and giggled. Garrett clasped my shoulder like a comrade. Iris simply nodded, warrior to warrior. And through it all, I felt the bonds forming, delicate silver threads connecting me to each wolf, to the pack structure, to Soren at its center. Not full pack bonds like those born into it, but real, binding, sacred. When the formalities ended and the gathering became a celebration, food appearing, music starting, children playing, Soren found me at the clearing's edge where I'd retreated, slightly overwhelmed. "Regretting it already?" he asked with a slight smile. "No, just adjusting. I've never belonged anywhere before." "Not really. You belong here." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. "And Ren? Thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me. For letting us protect you." He gazed out at his pack, at the joy and safety they'd created together. "We're stronger with you in it. I can already feel it." I looked with my sight and saw it was true. The pack bonds had brightened slightly, strengthened by the addition of something they'd been missing. Balance. Perspective. The wisdom of seeing beyond the obvious. "There's something coming," I said quietly. "I don't know what yet, but the mountain is preparing for it. That's why it called me home." Soren didn't dismiss it, didn't laugh. Just nodded gravely. "Then we'll face it together, whatever comes." As the sun set and the celebration continued, I stood among my new pack, protected, valued, seen, and felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever. Hope. The first snow came 6 weeks after I joined Crescent Hollow Pack, dusting the mountain peaks with white and turning the valley into a study of grays and golds. I'd settled into a rhythm that felt like breathing. Mornings spent developing my sight, afternoons helping where I was needed, healing minor injuries, counseling wolves through conflicts, reading the energy of situations before they escalated, evenings either at the cabin or among the pack. I was no longer the rejected Omega from Riverside. I was Ren, the seer. And slowly, carefully, I was learning what that meant. The mountain had grown more communicative. Sometimes I'd wake to find symbols drawn in frost on my windows, warnings, guidance, affirmations I was on the right path. The vast presence coiled at the peak had revealed itself more fully. An ancient spirit, neither wolf nor human, that had guarded this land since before packs existed. It had chosen Gran, and her mother before her, and now me. We were its voice, its eyes in the physical world. And it was trying to tell me something urgent. I'd been sensing it for days. A disturbance in the energy patterns, like static before a storm. The animals were restless. The spirits that normally danced through the forest had retreated to deeper places. Even the pack bonds felt strained. Though no one could articulate why, Soren felt it too. I could see it in the tension he carried. The way he'd started running longer patrols, the frequency of his visits to the cabin to ask if I'd seen anything concrete. Not yet, I'd tell him. But soon. Something's coming soon. On the night it happened, I was at the pack house, a large, rambling structure at the heart of Crescent Hollow territory, where wolves gathered for meals and meetings. Iris was teaching me chess while Sage practiced guitar in the corner. Garrett argued good-naturedly with another wolf about the best hunting grounds. Children ran through the halls shrieking with laughter. Normal, safe, home. Then every wolf in the building went rigid simultaneously, heads turning toward the east. "Alpha," Garrett said, his voice tight. "Border alert. Multiple wolves crossing into our territory." Soren was already moving, the switch from relaxed leader to warrior instantaneous. How many? At least 15, maybe more. My blood went cold. 15 wolves was an invasion force. And I knew, with the sick certainty of sight, exactly whose wolves they were. "Cade," I whispered. Soren's eyes met mine across the room. "Get to the safe room. Now. No." I stood, the pendant blazing hot against my chest. "This is because of me. I need to see what he's planning. Ren. I'm a seer, Soren. Let me see." For a moment I thought he'd refuse, thought the alpha in him would override everything else. But then he nodded sharply. "Iris, Garrett, with me. Sage, get the non-combatants secured. Ren." He crossed to me in 3 strides, cupped my face in both hands. "You stay behind me. You don't engage. Understood?" The touch sent warmth through me, along with a surge of something I couldn't name. Connection, trust, something deeper I wasn't ready to examine. Understood. We met them at the main border, where Crescent Hollow territory was marked by ancient stone cairns. Cade Frost stood at the front of his force, not 15 wolves, but 20, all in human form, all radiating aggression. He'd brought his strongest warriors, wolves built for violence, wolves who wouldn't hesitate. But he wasn't looking at Soren. He was looking at me. "There she is," Cade said pleasantly, as if we'd met for tea. "The little seer, hiding behind her pack's protection. How's that working out for you, Ren?" Soren stepped forward, physically blocking me from view. "This is an act of war, Frost. 20 wolves crossing borders without permission, armed and hostile. Give me one reason not to end this now." "Because you're reasonable. Because you're outnumbered." Cade's smile was all teeth. "And because I'm not here to fight. I'm here to negotiate." "There's nothing to negotiate." "Oh, but there is." Cade's eyes found mine again over Soren's shoulder. "You see, I've done my research. A seer hasn't emerged in pack society for nearly a century. Do you know what that means? What she's worth?" He addressed the Crescent Hollow wolves now, voice carrying. With a seer, a pack could anticipate threats, could see opportunity before competition, could dominate territory disputes without bloodshed. She's not just valuable, She's the ultimate strategic asset. I felt Soren's pack stirring uneasily, not because they agreed, but because Cade was voicing something true. I was valuable in ways I'd only begun to understand, which is why, Cade continued, I'm prepared to offer terms. Ren comes with me willingly. I pay Crescent Hollow substantial compensation for releasing her guardianship, and we all walk away as allies rather than enemies. Everyone wins. Except Ren, Iris snarled, who loses her freedom. She'd be honored, protected, given everything she needs. Cade's reasonable tone was somehow more threatening than open hostility. And your pack gets resources it desperately needs. Soren, you're struggling. Small pack, limited territory, human population to manage. My offer could change everything for you. I saw it then, with sight, Cade's true plan. He didn't just want me for strategic advantage. His pack was fracturing badly, worse than I'd seen before. Without an Omega to stabilize them, they'd tear themselves apart within months. He was desperate, and desperate alphas were capable of anything. I also saw the threads of his current strategy. He'd brought too many wolves, intentionally. If Soren refused, Cade would claim an insult to pack honor, would use it as justification for violence, and 20 against 37, when 20 were all warriors, and Crescent Hollow's number included children and elders. He'd planned this carefully, a trap disguised as negotiation. Before Soren could respond, I stepped around him. Ren, no. But I was already walking forward, every eye on me. The pendant burned like a star against my chest, and I let the sight flare fully, let it show me everything I needed to see. You're dying, I said to Cade, voice carrying clear in the cold air. Your pack is eating itself alive. 3 of your wolves have already left. I can see the severed bonds. 2 more are planning to. Your second is plotting against you. You're hemorrhaging loyalty, hemorrhaging strength, and you think I'm the solution. I stopped just beyond Soren's reach. But I'm not. Because the problem isn't the absence of an Omega. It's you. Cade's pleasant expression cracked. Careful, little Omega. I see you, I continued, letting power fill my voice. Not dominance, not submission, but the ancient authority of truth. You rule through fear and manipulation. You've broken trust so many times your wolves don't remember what it feels like. An Omega can soothe conflicts, can calm tensions, but we can't fix what's rotten at the core. I met his ice blue eyes. Even if you took me by force, I'd burn through your pack like acid. Seers don't stabilize corruption. We expose it. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Cade laughed. Cold, cruel. Bold words. Let's see if you maintain them when your precious pack is bleeding. He nodded to his wolves. They shifted. 20 wolves, all warriors, suddenly stood in predator form, massive, battle-scarred, trained for violence. The Crescent Hollow wolves shifted in response, but I could see the calculation in everyone's eyes. This would be a slaughter. The mountain trembled. I felt it through my feet, through my bones, through the pendant blazing against my skin. The ancient guardian was responding, rising from its peak, drawn by the threat to its chosen seer. Stop, I commanded. My voice carried power I'd never accessed before, the combined authority of every seer who'd worn this pendant, every guardian who'd protected this mountain, the land itself speaking through me. The ground beneath Cade's wolves erupted. Not violently, not harmfully, but roots burst from the soil like living ropes, wrapping around paws and legs, holding the shifted wolves immobile. The trees bent, creating a living cage. The mountain itself had responded to my call, protecting its own. Cade shifted back to human form, staring in shock. What? How? This is sacred ground, I said, and my voice echoed strangely, layered with something ancient, protected by powers older than packs, older than wolves. You threaten what is under guardianship. You threaten balance. I took a step forward, and he actually retreated. Leave. Now, and don't return. This is your only warning. For a moment I thought he'd refuse. Thought pride would override survival instinct. But then he looked at me. Really looked. and saw what I'd become. Not just an omega, not just a seer, but something that bridged worlds, that carried the mountain's will. He whistled sharply. The roots released his wolves. One by one, they shifted back to human form and retreated, disappearing into the forest toward Seattle, toward their dying pack and uncertain future. When they were gone, I collapsed. Soren caught me before I hit the ground, cradling me against his chest. "I've got you. You're safe. Did that really happen?" "You called the mountain," Iris breathed, staring at the disturbed earth where roots were slowly retreating. "Helena could commune with it, could ask it for guidance, but I've never seen anyone command it." "The Guardian chose well," Garrett added quietly. Soren carried me back to the pack house despite my protest that I could walk. He settled me in his private office, a comfortable room lined with books and maps, and pressed tea into my hands. "That," he said once we were alone, "was the most terrifying and amazing thing I've ever witnessed." I didn't know I could do that. My hands shook around the mug. The mountain just responded, like it was waiting for permission, because it trusts you, recognizes you. Soren knelt before my chair, looking up at me with those deep brown eyes. "Do you understand what you did tonight? You prevented a war. You saved lives, both packs, and you did it without violence. The old way," I whispered, remembering Gran's words. "Seers maintained balance, prevented conflict before it became bloodshed." "Yes." He took one of my hands, warming it between both of his. "You're not just pack, Ren. You're essential. Not because of what you can do for us, but because of who you are." The way he looked at me made my breath catch. This was different from pack bonds, different from protection and duty. This was personal, intimate. The loneliness I'd seen in him was reflected in me, and somewhere in the past 6 weeks, something had been building between us. Recognition, understanding, attraction that went deeper than designation or role. "Soren," I started, but didn't know how to finish. He stood slowly, pulled me to my feet. "I need to tell you something. Should have told you weeks ago, but I was trying to be honorable. Trying not to pressure you when you were vulnerable." His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. "You're not just under my pack's protection. You're under my protection specifically, and it's not just duty, Ren. It's choice," I finished softly. "I know. I can see it. Can you see this?" He cupped my face, giving me every chance to retreat. When I didn't, he kissed me. It was gentle, questioning, nothing like the claiming kisses I'd read about in romance novels. This was 2 wounded people finding safety in each other, 2 leaders recognizing partnership, 2 souls that had been searching for home. When we broke apart, I was crying. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears, tears of relief that someone saw me completely and wanted me anyway. "I'm broken," I whispered. "Rejected, damaged, still learning who I'm supposed to be." "You're perfect," he countered. "Strong, wise, brave enough to stand against a 20-wolf invasion force and win with nothing but truth." He kissed my forehead. "And I'd like to court you properly if you'll let me. No pressure, no expectations, just time to see what this could be." Through the window I could see the mountain peak, snow-covered and serene under the stars. The Guardian's presence pulsed with approval, warm and ancient and patient. In the months that followed, life found its rhythm. Soren courted me with old-fashioned patience. Long walks, shared meals, conversations that lasted until dawn. The pack accepted our growing bond with joy, especially when they saw how we balanced each other. His strength and my sight, his decisiveness and my wisdom, his protection and my healing. I continued developing my gifts, growing stronger. When spring came, I taught 3 young Omegas who'd joined the pack the basics of sight, planting seeds for a future where seers were remembered and valued rather than forgotten. Cade's pack fractured completely. We heard reports, wolves leaving, the Alpha challenged and defeated, Silver Point territory absorbed by neighboring packs. I felt no satisfaction in it, only sadness for the waste. And on the anniversary of my arrival at Blackthorn Ridge, Soren asked me to be his mate. We stood in the cabin where it had all begun, surrounded by Gran's things, the mountain watching over us. When I said yes, the pack bonds between us flared gold, complete and binding. Not omega and alpha in the traditional sense, but partners, equals, two halves of a balanced whole. That night, we ran together under the full moon, the entire pack in wolf form, celebrating. I was smaller than the others, my wheat-colored fur pale in the moonlight. But I kept pace. Because I was pack. I was home. I was exactly where I was meant to be. Standing on the mountain peak in human form later, Soren's arms around me, I touched the pendant and felt Gran's joy like sunshine. Thank you, I whispered to her memory, to the mountain, to the guardian that had called me home. Thank you for teaching me that rejection wasn't failure. It was redirection. The mountain hummed with approval. And somewhere in the valley below, in the cabin that held generations of wisdom, in the pack that had claimed me, in the alpha whose heart beat in rhythm with mine, I had found what I'd been searching for all along. Not acceptance from those who couldn't see my worth, but recognition from those who could. I was Wren Ashford, the seer of Blackthorn Ridge, Omega, healer, bridge between worlds, rejected by those who feared difference, claimed by those who valued it, and I was finally, beautifully, completely home.